this panel is about growing SMEs. SMEs are the lifeblood for the UK economy. And today I'm joined by individuals who can help build that conversation. I particularly would like to thank Susan, who stood in at the last minute to help build the panel, because they were dropping like flies. So, but thank you ever so much, Amit, for sticking it out and still being here. So, very excited for this conversation today, because SMEs are what we need in the UK to succeed. Each of you in turn first, briefly, tell me about your company, starting with Amit and then Susan.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I missed the last two Connected Places summits. There were trade missions, one to US, one to India, exactly at the same time clashing. I'm delighted to be here, and it's an absolute honor. So first of all, thank you. My name is Amit Bhave. Please call me Amit. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CMCL. The letters CMCL stand for Computational Modeling Cambridge Limited. We are a digitalization first company, spun out of Cambridge about 18 years back, and we have developed an enabler for interoperability and agency. So there's a lot of news about agentic workflows, about semantic interoperability, and we do that for our customers, both from the public sector as well as private sector, using our technology flagship, which is called the World Avatar. So that's what we do.
Great, thank you.
Morning, everybody. My name is Susan Ross. I'm Deputy Director at Edge Innovation. We're a Northeast-based consultancy, so we're based in Gateshead. What we do is bring, I guess, the process and the framework around human-centered design or design thinking principles to help very small startup businesses all the way to international or multinational fast-moving consumer goods industry businesses, to help them make sure that they're developing the right product or service to fit a market gap and that it lands with the right consumer. So yeah, that's what we do, and through that we see ourselves as bringing, I guess, the framework to the experts to help them to be able to progress their journeys.
Great, thank you. So Amit, looking back at your journey so far, you said you've been on the journey for a long time. Very Strictly Come Dancing, isn't it? When did you know you had a product that was right for the market?
That's a good question. So our journey has been slightly, I would call it strange and different, in the sense that when we were spun out, it happened by accident with a commercial customer right standing up there with us. And we started off as a software company developing software, for example, traditionally for automotive, for chemical, and for energy industries. This happened over the last 10 years as an organic company. And the realization of the product and the market need, that sort of came out because we realized that no one in the industry talks to the teams within the organizations. They don't talk to each other. When I say talk to each other, I don't mean literally just talk, but if you look at the pieces of software, if you look at the data sources, everything is heterogeneous, which is fine, but then it needs to be connected at some level. And if you don't have that connected mindset, if you don't have that joint up thinking, as Erica highlighted in her speech just a few minutes back, then you lose out on the decision making. So we identified the market need then, and that's when we started developing a product which sort of embraces that connected mindset. And this is when the seeds for the World Avatar were sown by the director and my business partner, Professor Marcus Kraft. And this sort of led us to the realization that there is a market need. We would have a product that would power this enabling of interoperability and agency. And that's been our, I think, journey so far. It's an exciting journey, but we are literally still on the runway. I feel there's lots to do.
Great. So Susan, in your experience working with SMEs, what have you observed as the biggest structural barrier for businesses scaling in the UK, and what do you think would most improve the environment for high potential SMEs?
I'm not entirely sure there's just one, to be fair. I think there are lots of different structural barriers out there at the moment. I mean, obviously, the economy is a major challenge for businesses, getting investment into the business, but also having the confidence to actually scale your business, be able to bring on the right staff at the right time. There's a lot of risk out there that I think is a major concern for SMEs. The funding pipeline has been really challenging for businesses. Obviously, we support some of those businesses that may be accessing that funding, and that's become even more competitive in the last couple of years. So that, again, has a knock-on, because if we're not having that real early-stage innovation, we're not then able to get that growth later on in it. And I think procurement's one of those challenges and a barrier as well for many people. Quite often, procurement, unfortunately, does the opposite of innovation and puts us into little boxes. And I know there are changes within some of that. And I know there's a shout out to one of our Northeast organisations, but at NIPO, they're developing a new innovation procurement platform at the moment to try and start to do more of that and to unlock some of those procurement challenges that exist, so that we can actually get more innovation into the public sector and into the private sector and for SMEs as well. And I think also connections is a major barrier for SMEs, so actually being able to not just have that good idea, but to be able to have that connection either into public authorities or into much larger corporates that then give them that credibility to actually then develop and grow is really important. And we've seen that a lot through some of the innovation challenges that we've done on behalf of local authorities across the UK.
Amit.
Yeah, I mean, most of I agree with everything Susan has mentioned, and these are the barriers. The way we think about it at CMCL, these are sort of split into intrinsic and extrinsic. They're both connected in still. So intrinsic means where we keep on fighting as a constant barrier is when we are innovating, let's say, then how to manage that balance between the absolutely ruthlessly commercial mindset that needs to be brought on, while making sure that you meet all the technical demands from a technical side for that TRL, so the technology readiness level progression, especially that chasm between 6 to 9. And while you're doing that, how to be ruthlessly commercial, how not to get excited or at times overexcited with just the technical innovation part. I think that forms for us as a team as an internal barrier. I don't know if I'm saying the right or wrong things about the company, but that's what I face. The extrinsic barrier is in the sense of I think what Susan mentioned, and also Erica touched upon that, which is imagine doing this innovation, having proven something, and then trying to build on that into and pivoting to the next challenge in order to scale up. Yep. To just prove yourself again in front of whosoever is the customer, and to start back from scratch where you have gone through that TRL journey of 1 to even 8, to be reset back to 1 and 2 is a challenge. And there have been thought pieces from Justin has done that at CPC. There are papers in there talking about this, but I don't think there is enough incentives to really realize how they can help the SMEs in this. It's definitely a barrier, but the solution is yet to be
formed.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Just a reminder, I haven't seen questions yet, but do put in your questions. I'll keep going until I see something interesting on here. So again, for you, Amit, leadership is hard. I know, because I've been there. What's been the most important leadership decision you've had to make when moving from an early product to a more scalable organisation? And how did your role or the roles of others in your organisation have to evolve? Leadership challenge.
That's a huge question. I think the main challenge from a leadership perspective, the main change, has been to move the mindset from a siloed development, because as a business you're focused on, let's say, making money, but making money through a development in an area, to then realize that, okay, you can work on this, you can make it a success, but there is still a limited impact. And the challenge has been to accept that we need to move on and pivot from that area which makes you money in the short term, to pivot from that to a more connected, joined-up mindset, where then you're looking at problems which are cross-domain, and suddenly it opens a flurry of problems and problem owners, in the form of the leadership challenges, how to embrace this change from a siloed to connected mindset, and that changes everything. That changes the way you develop technology. That changes the way you have to balance yourself between the being ruthlessly commercial and innovation, and to inspire the team. I must say I'm super fortunate to have a superb team at CMCL, but also the collaborators that when we collaborate with projects such as CPC, asset owners, etc. So.
And then, Susan, how do you ensure that when you try and scale quickly, you don't undermine long-term resilience, culture, and purpose, particularly when you're dealing with uncertain economic times that we're in at the moment?
Yeah, I think that's a real challenge, and I think you've just alluded to some of that in terms of those cross-functional teams that you might have both internally but also the networks you've got. When you're scaling really quickly, unfortunately, you can get mission drift. You maybe lose sight of some of those really important things because you're trying to do everything at such a pace on possibly really limited resources as well, that can be really challenging. And I think what we see a lot of is in terms of that inclusive innovation and how important it is to have very inclusive teams to help you do that. But actually sometimes that retention of those inclusive teams can be really challenging when actually you then are trying to scale really fast and really quickly. And some of those elements are the bits that sometimes fall by the wayside a little bit more, unfortunately. And then before you know it, you maybe have drifted quite far from where you actually want to be and what you set out to do, because you're so on that track of trying to overcome the barriers as you're doing that scaling.
Great. So there are questions coming in, and you can vote up and vote down. No, you can't vote down. You can vote up for question on Slido. So I'm going to take the top of the charts question now just to show that it works. And anyone can answer this. Do you see partnerships between SMEs and larger tech companies as an enabler or disabler for smaller, innovative companies? Who wants that one?
I'll have a quick go and then you can answer it, I'm sure. Personally, I think that's a real enabler. There are obviously barriers around some of that, but on some of the programs we've worked with, we've done some work around an EV charging, and one of the fast growth companies that you just mentioned, Fuse, was one of those that we've had the pleasure of working through an Innovate UK project. And actually being able to work with some of those different teams and those, again, multifunctional teams that bring in some of that expert, but not just on a technical readiness, but actually a societal readiness as well. And some of the inclusive innovation that we've done through there has been really, really interesting. But having those small, nimble, agile teams really do kind of make things move up much quicker sometimes. But as you said, there can be some barriers to that as well.
It's a question with multiple facets and dimensions, because I was wondering when we all utter the word AI in this summit, and I think I'll be the first one. So when we talk about sovereign AI as an example, I don't think in the UK currently there is an option where the whole stack from hardware infrastructure up to applications, we can really call it truly sovereign UK, which means either we invest and develop that, or we team up with the proven tech companies. I don't need to name them, you all know them, to team up with them and focus on what is our differentiator. And our differentiator could be, I think Erica did mention DSI, data sharing infrastructure, or in general with data infrastructure, how to improve the provenance, the trust aspects. My overall view is it is positive to team up with, given the constraints that we have in the UK. This answer will differ depending on where we operate, clearly. And there is a huge piece on regulation as well as export control. So when you work with AI stuff with China, for example, etc. So this question is a minefield. I would overall say positive if it's in the innovation space, but we have to be careful when it comes to the commercialization terms.
I saw lots of nodding in the audience. There's resonance to both your answers there. You touched on regulation. It's not the highest yet. I'm going to come back to the highest. This question, on your growth journey, how do you take into account regulations that might not fit the product being offered, or in some cases does not even exist yet? These are tricky questions.
Well, thanks for that one, Amit. And whoever came up with it.
They're fighting over the answers today.
It was your turn to go first. Yeah, I think regulation is a major challenge, and we've seen that with lots of different areas that we get involved in, a lot of transport solutions. And I guess it's about trying to champion some of that and using some of the networks and the Catapult in the Department of Transport to try and actually feed back where those regulations aren't meeting with the realities that we're trying to develop. And again, when it's innovation, sometimes that's where we're stifling it because of that regulation, and those regulations don't necessarily meet what we want to do and how we want to do it. There's no doubt that's a major challenge, and I think the only way we can try and overcome that is by trying to share those challenges in places like this forum and others, so that we can make people aware of it and then try to get the change in regulations that's needed.
Do you want to
yes, I would like
to answer.
I would like to add a couple of things. I think just from an example of the work that we do, we look at regulation in a way that we can also work with, and when I say that, working with the regulator, whether it's, for example, currently, if you look at cross-sector problems, then there are lack of standards, there are lack of regulators, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So, and not just in the UK, but we see the same in Germany, we see the same in Singapore and India. And can we bring those, or can we work with the regulators, first of all, and help them demonstrate, by demonstrating the value add with regulation that's, I don't know, it's a tough one, because you don't want to stifle the innovation, as Susan said, but at the same time you need some guardrails, otherwise it's just Wild West in quotes. So
I was just going to say, but I think we do see this in many different facets. So one of the areas that Edge have been working in recently is around community renewals and trying to help more community energy projects to develop, and we've seen the projects where they've really become almost uneconomically viable because of the regulations around some of that and the way that the contracting happens around grid connections, etc. And there's some real massive challenges there that actually nobody really understands until you dig into it and then discover that actually some of these are around regulation. Actually, some of it's not about regulation, but the way organisations apply things, and sometimes that's done in very different ways, regionally, locally, in local authorities. We see that a lot with EV charging points and how some of those frameworks are put down. And again, it's sometimes about challenging those different bits, because some of them are regulatory bits that need to go back up the chain to sort out, and others are just about trying to challenge different authorities on some of that and how they lay that down.
Great. One more from Slido. Different transport areas, roads, rails, maritime, aviation, are still silos in most countries. Future transport needs to be more interconnected, and also policies need to be more integrated to allow SMEs to scale. What is UK plans to support the multimodality of transport? Do we need to give this to Samir? No.
I was going to say, I think this would be great if we had Department for Transport to tell us about their integrated strategy, which I think is coming out in May. But yeah, I think, again, it's a major challenge. Up in the northeast, we're looking at a really interesting project there about how we develop multimodal responses in rural areas, particularly in peri-urban areas, because as we know, that's an even bigger challenge than it is in the cities and the towns. But it is very difficult because you've got different players that you've got to work with. We've got less investment in infrastructure. There are, the challenges are even bigger there than they might be in the towns and cities. And believe you me, if you spend your time down in London versus the northeast, there's huge, big regional disparities in the way that works. Even on our cities, the disparities are massive, let alone when you get into the rural areas. So it does require different ways of thinking. And again, that is where there are times regulatory barriers, but there's also just even the silos and mentalities between different organisations, and trying to break down those, where the more we can do with that, the more innovation projects we can all get involved in, the more hopefully we can develop better multimodal transport solutions for people.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, DFT, Department for Transport, has released the economic benefit from the integration of multimodal transport. So it's they've put the evidence out there.
Yep.
I also know for sure there are companies in the audience. I met some of the CEOs in the reception area who look at this problem. So there is a market for that. There is innovation happening as we speak. I think we just need to match the two. And again, I can't talk on behalf of UK, but as a UK SME, and knowing that there are other SMEs and innovators in this room who are exactly dealing with this problem, I think if we have proven that the market exists, if we have the suppliers, the aim is to then have that marketplace to join the two.
Great. Well, I can see the clock's going red, so I've got 3 more minutes. So I'm going to ask a final question to you each. Okay, ready? In one sentence, so it can be quite a long sentence because you've got 3 minutes. What do you want this audience to remember most from this session? Even if you've not touched on it yet. So what's this one thing you'd like people to understand about scaling SMEs in the UK?
Okay, I'll go first this time, Susan. I think a very short sentence, hopefully. I think it would be to enable the pivot by reusing critical mass of innovation. I think if you can do, and so pivot means you have pivot from whether it's software to AI, I don't differentiate, but whether it's software to AI or pivot from one market segment to the other, but that's ability to pivot, but while doing that, reusing the critical mass of innovation, and not to throw everything away and scratch, which is what we have been doing as software companies for ages, developing in silos, hence what I say.
Great, thanks, Amit. Susan?
I think for me, it's probably something along the lines of a great idea isn't always enough. There's a whole range of other things that have to be around it to make it work, you know, the support, the regulatory conditions, the economic conditions, and the more of that support and expertise we can have around these businesses and SMEs, particularly in startup, but also in that scale-up phase, you know, get them through the valley of death and all of the rest of it is really important. And the more that we have that, then hopefully the higher growth we'll get in the country.
Great. So thank you ever so much to my panel, to Amit and Susan, for their contributions. Hopefully you can hear a number of common themes. There was a lot about SMEs talking to each other. You're solving similar problems in maybe different verticals. So use this time you have here to share your ideas, to share your journeys, and build those connections to help your company scale. The CPC team are there. They're working on things like procurement, and they can do some scaling help for you. So do reach out to those CPC teams while you're here. But thank you ever so much, both of you, for joining me, and enjoy the rest of the day. Please thank my panel.